May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be pleasing to you, Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. On the topic of being chosen by God, many people think that it's already been done, and those chosen are listed within the pages of the Bible. The list is quite long, and there are many verses, and chapters, and books that name these people and how God chose them for Him. They chose Abraham, Moses, Ruth, Samuel, David, Esther, Mary, John the Baptizer, Paul. These are some of the chosen ones. And they were indeed chosen by God, and they worked for God, for His purpose in their generation. Many don't consider the fact that God has in every generation called out to His people to serve in the current time. All believers have the capacity to hear God's call, but often we don't listen carefully for the call, or like the prophet Jonah, we would prefer the call go to someone else. Now the prophet Samuel, whose call to serve God was revealed in the Old Testament lesson for the day, represents a chosen one who was specifically dedicated to the Lord's service by someone else, his mother, Hannah. The books of 1st and 2nd Samuel chronicle some of the most exciting times in the story of Israel, starting with the barren Hannah pleading for a son, and proceeds to follow the development of what is known as the golden age of the kingdom. During Samuel's lifetime of service, Israel transformed from a tribal-based people who were led by judges to an established kingdom. Samuel served as a judge, prophet, priest, and a reluctant leader for the movement to place a king over Israel. Now these events came to fruition because a 12-year-old boy was instructed by his mentor to respond to the voice of God. The mentor, Eli, was to have his family destroyed because of this sacred conversation, but he was not in denial of the charges that God brought against his sons, as they did do evil deeds, such as desecrating the offerings of the people and forcing themselves upon young women serving at the tabernacle as a result of their position, of their power over them. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Now, the gospel lesson from John is another example of being chosen by God and how a couple of Galileans responded to the call. Upon finding Philip, Jesus simply says, "Follow me," and that's what Philip does. Philip is so certain that he's found the Messiah that he immediately sets out to find his buddy, Nathanael, so he too can become part of the Jesus movement. Now, Nathanael doesn't share the same enthusiasm and can't believe a Nazarene could be one spoken of by Moses and the prophets. Nathanael thinks Philip's crazy. To a pure Jew, the inhabitants of Nazareth were only country folk with a country accent, and they were a racially mixed community. How could anything come good out of there? That is the same sort of prejudice that we encounter, and perhaps we exhibit in unguarded moments. We understand firsthand how some cannot accept the fact that those who are not like us have also been chosen by God. People of color and different sexual orientation could be the Nazarenes today. The president has spoken what many people have in their heart with his position that immigrants from Haiti and parts of Africa are of no worth to this country as immigrants. The welcoming and affirming sign on our parish hall door is not displayed as a victory symbol of an ideological battle between parishioners, but is rather our acknowledgement that people of God can be found in all places, and to worship with them is a privilege that God has given us. We need to rebuke the claims of anyone who pronounce that God has a segregationist intent for his creation, when in fact it is individual or group prejudice at the core of such beliefs. God seeks to make his creation whole, which makes inclusiveness a major part of his plan. Now, Nathanael has a quick change of heart after following Philip's invitation to come see Jesus for himself. Nathanael is overcome by the ability of Jesus to see his inner self, and he makes the confession for which Peter is better known for. He says, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." What a reversal. One minute, Nathanael was saying, "No way," and the next moment, he's saying, "Yahweh." That was our joke book. Well, yet Jesus responds to that. He says that Nathanael has not seen anything yet. He will see great signs or miracles of Jesus' ministry. He will accompany Jesus as he heads towards crucifixion, and Nathanael will be present for the resurrection and ascension. That's what he'll see. Nathanael comprehends better than most of the disciples that Jesus serves as the point of contact between heaven and earth. "Very truly, I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." This series of events started for Nathanael because he was willing to listen to when God spoke to him. Paul was a leader of a group that sought an end to what was seen as an indignation to the true children of Israel, the persistence of a movement called the Way. God promptly knocks him on his butt, and he says, "I choose you. I choose you to make the Way the means by which to spread the message of Jesus to the entire world." Well, just like Nathanael, Paul becomes a starting member of the varsity team, and he earns his Letterman's Award. Paul goes even further with his responsibilities and spells out exactly how those who choose to follow the precepts of Christianity are to act. He realizes that with this choice comes a great responsibility. Though we are human and we do have many weaknesses, we do have the resources and the supports to refuse the vulgarities of this world. Like those to whom Paul ministered, we are in a country that have an understanding that we are free to do many things that aren't necessarily evil, but they are not conducive either to the breaking in of the kingdom of heaven on earth. We're free, but these things are often behaviors and ideas that make us callous and hollow, not caring and holy. As Paul claims, not all things are beneficial, and many things can dominate us. Such actions and behaviors are in contrast to how God would like to see us in our lives in a servant ministry. After accepting the call of Jesus in our lives, we are still challenged to keep our lives in proper covenant. Belonging to Christ precludes all other affiliations. As the Living the Good News editors wrote for this week, freedom is not only deliverance from the law, it is the freedom for service of God. They write further, the body, being the temple that contains the Holy Spirit, should not be profaned by sinful behavior. It is our vessel in which we maintain relationship with God and one another. We are lucky to have the accounts of those who God chose to lead his people within the pages of the Bible. The lives of those we remember today, Samuel, Nathaniel, Paul, they set standards for which we are to strive. We're also lucky to have in our lives people who are not in the Bible, but are of the Bible. That means my friends here. We're also lucky. People who are responsible for us gathered here today. People who shared the story of God's people with us. People who were our Phillips, told us, come see for ourselves that God is good. And those like Paul who remind us that we are not our own, but instead we're created with the purpose of serving God within our generation. The coming of the new year means that many of us will be scheduled for a current wellness visit at the doctor's. These are visits that are proactive with our health and encourages behaviors meant to lower our risk for illness. I might suggest that we also include an analysis of our spiritual health at this time. Is there a current connection between our ears and our hearts that listens and acts to what God speaks? Amen.
Amen.